It was late October when I ended up on that back road outside Selma. I had been driving all day hauling supplies for a small construction job, and I was tired, bone-deep tired. The sun had already dipped behind the trees when I left the main highway, thinking I could shave a few miles off by taking a shortcut. The road started as pavement, cracked and full of weeds pushing through the seams, then turned to hard-packed dirt with ruts carved into it by trucks like mine. I didn't think much of it at first, just kept my foot steady on the accelerator, trying to ignore the way the headlights bounced off the trees in long, twisting shadows. The thing about Alabama backroads is they are not forgiving. The trees grow thick and close, their branches almost touching the ground in some places, and the road twists and turns with no warning. You think you see something up ahead, some break in the forest, and when you get closer, it's just another curve, another shadow. By the time I realized I might be lost, the only light came from my own truck, the yellow beams cutting through the dark like knives. I hit a stretch where the dirt gave way to mud. The tires squealed and I felt the truck slide back and forth once, twice. I tried to slow down, but the road had a slick sheen from earlier rain and my brakes barely did anything. Somewhere in the darkness, I heard a branch snap hard, close enough that I felt it shiver through the cab. My heart thumped in my chest, loud enough I thought the sound might echo off the trees. I kept going, trying to tell myself it was just a deer or a tree falling. But nothing moved, nothing ran. The forest was so quiet I could hear my own breathing in the engine. The truck started to fishtail again and I cursed under my breath. My headlights caught something in the mud tire tracks, not fresh, older, half filled with water. They were wide, like something big had gone through here, maybe another truck, but the spacing didn't match mine exactly. Something about them made me tense. I slowed even more, creeping along like I was trying to sneak past some predator. The trees pressed in tighter on both sides now, like the road had narrowed overnight. I couldn't see the sky anymore, just darkness above the jagged tops of the pines. Then, in the periphery of my headlights, I saw it, a figure. Not a person exactly, more like a shape hunched over, standing still beside the road. I slammed the brakes, the tires screaming, mud flying. The shape didn't move. For a second I thought it was a deer, but its posture was wrong. Too upright, too stiff. I considered backing up, but the truck was already halfway into the mud again. My foot hovered over the accelerator, the other on the brake. My chest felt tight. I didn't want to look, but I had to, because something about the way it stood made my stomach twist. The headlights caught its face, pale, dirty, expressionless, and for one heartbeat I thought it was dead. Then it stepped forward, slow, deliberate, and I realized it wasn't a person at all. It was a man, badly hurt. Clothes torn, covered in mud, scratches and bruises on his face, limping toward the trees. But there was no sound. No groan, no shout, nothing. Just the shape moving against the dark. I yanked the steering wheel hard, trying to turn around, but the truck got stuck. The tires spun in the mud, throwing chunks against the cab. My hand slipped on the wheel. Panic hit like a punch to the chest. I tried rocking it back and forth, forward, backward, anything, and finally, with a lurch, the truck slid onto slightly firmer ground. I didn't wait. I put it in gear and floored it. The mud sprayed out behind me, and I didn't look back, not until the road started to widen again, until the trees let a little more light in, and I could see the horizon starting to pale with the first hints of morning. After what felt like hours, I reached a small, abandoned gas station on the edge of a town I didn't recognize. The pumps were rusted through, the windows covered in grime, but the parking lot was dry. I pulled in, leaving the truck running, heart still hammering, sweat dripping from my scalp. I tried to tell myself I'd imagined it, the shape, the figure, the way it moved. But the tire tracks I'd followed were still there, deep and messy in the mud, and I knew I hadn't made them. Something had been out there, and it had been big enough to track through the dirt, following the road, following me. I called the police when I found a payphone. My cell had no signal, of course, and tried to explain. They asked me questions I couldn't answer, said they'd send someone to check the area, and I waited, pacing. The truck was still warm, idling where I'd left it, and I finally forced myself to go back to it. The mud had dried on the tires. The truck looked like it had been parked for days, and for a moment I thought maybe I'd dreamed the whole thing. Maybe I'd been hallucinating from exhaustion. But then I saw it. In the corner of the windshield, faint, smeared with mud, a handprint. Not mine. Small, thin, but unmistakable. And I knew. That figure hadn't been alone out there. It hadn't just been wandering. It had been tracking. Waiting. Watching. I drove slowly back toward the main road, eyes darting to every shadow, every curve in the trees. I didn't see it again, not moving, not standing, but I felt it. The forest has a way of keeping secrets, and I understood then that some of them are alive even if you can't see them. I kept going even when the road tried to pull me back into the mud, until the lights of a town finally appeared, small and reassuring. I spent the next few days telling myself I was lucky. The road could have swallowed me, the mud could have trapped me, and whatever had left that handprint could have followed me further. But it hadn't. And I realized the only reason I'd made it out was because I hadn't stopped, hadn't lingered, hadn't tried to rationalize the situation in the dark. Fear can be paralyzing, but it can also keep you moving, keep you alive. The truck got cleaned and repaired, and I returned to my normal routes. I never took that shortcut again, not even once. And I never forgot the look of that figure, the way the forest had swallowed the road behind me, how quiet it was when I should have heard movement. That back road still exists, I know it, still twisting through the trees, still waiting, and I know there are things out there that don't belong to us, things that don't make noise, things that just watch and wait. Even now, when I drive late at night on unfamiliar roads, I remember that mud, those tracks, the handprint. And I am careful. Too careful, some might say. But some roads, some nights you don't want to test. And that night, on that Alabama back road, I learned the hard way that being careful can be the only thing that keeps you alive. It was late summer, the kind of night in Alabama where the air clings to your skin and the cicadas won't quit screaming no matter how much you beg them to. I had been driving down a back road near my hometown, the kind of road nobody bothers to fix because it's barely used, and the asphalt was cracked and uneven. My old truck rattled over the bumps, every pothole echoing like a warning I wasn't ready to hear. I didn't usually take this road at night, but I had stayed too long at a friend's house helping with some yard work, and I figured the shortcut through the woods would get me home faster. The moon was barely there, shrouded by thick clouds that made the sky look darker than it should have been. I remember thinking how quiet it was even for a back road. No dogs barking, no frogs croaking, no hum of a distant tractor. Just me, the truck, and the occasional rustle of leaves as the wind nudged the trees. About 10 minutes into the drive, I noticed something strange. At first, I thought it was a trick of the headlights, but I slowed down to be sure. On the side of the road, there was a car parked, facing the wrong direction. Its hazard lights weren't on, just the faint glow of the tail lights. The car looked old, like it had been sitting there for a while, the paint dulled and dusty. Something about it felt off. My gut tightened, but I told myself maybe someone had just broken down. I had seen that before in these parts. As I drove past it slowly, I caught movement. Not a person moving, but a shadow shifting inside the car. I blinked hard. My heart started to thump, the sound loud in my own ears. I had a choice: keep going or stop to check if someone needed help. Normally, I wouldn't hesitate to help, but something about this felt wrong, like stepping out there would be stepping into a trap. My truck's engine felt suddenly loud, almost too loud, as I tried to push it out of my head. I forced myself to focus on the road. The road narrowed after that, almost turning into a trail between overgrown bushes. My headlights barely reached past 10 feet, cutting jagged swaths through the dark. Every now and then, a tree branch scraped against the roof of the truck, sending shivers down my spine. Then I saw it, a figure standing in the middle of the road up ahead. I slammed on the brakes, my heart hammering. The figure didn't move at first. I couldn't tell if it was a person or something else. My mind ran through the possibilities, none of them comforting. The figure stepped aside at the last second, but not before I got a full view. It was a man, tall, wearing clothes that looked like they had been outside for days. His hair was long, tangled, and his face was pale in the light of the truck. He didn't say anything, didn't even blink, just stood there and let me pass. I drove past him slowly, feeling a need to look back but fighting it. My truck's tires crunched over gravel, the sound too loud. When I glanced in the rearview mirror, he was gone. Just gone. No sign he had been there at all. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of the light, a shadow or a reflection, but my stomach didn't agree. I pressed the gas and kept driving, hoping to get back to a more familiar road. The trees seemed closer now, almost pressing against the truck like the darkness was alive. My headlights caught something moving in the brush to my right twice, maybe 3 times. Quick flashes, almost like something running. I wanted to convince myself it was an animal, maybe a raccoon or a fox. But the way it moved didn't feel natural, too deliberate, almost like it was following me. Then the truck started making a strange noise, a grinding sound from the front. I looked down and saw the battery light flickering on and off. My mind went straight to worst-case scenarios, getting stuck out here, miles from anyone, with whatever had been in those shadows waiting. I pulled over as quickly as I could onto a patch of dirt, trying to keep calm. I popped the hood, but nothing looked wrong. No smoke, no loose wires, nothing. My hands shook and I had to lean on the truck for support. That's when I noticed a faint set of footprints in the dirt beside the truck, leading off into the woods. They weren't huge, but they weren't small either. Whoever or whatever had made them had walked with purpose, and they stopped at the edge of the tree line like they were waiting for me to notice. I knew then I couldn't stay. I slammed the hood, jumped into the truck and started it up. The engine roared like it was angry at me, but at least it ran. I kept my eyes on the road, trying to keep calm, when I saw headlights appear in the distance behind me. Only one set. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just another car. Whoever it was, they were following me. I tried to stay calm, kept driving, but the headlights stayed the same distance behind me no matter how fast I went. My mind raced. I remembered there was a gas station about 5 miles back toward the main road. If I could make it there, there would be other people, maybe even a cop. I took the first turn back toward the main road, my hands gripping the wheel until they hurt. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror constantly. The headlights followed every turn, every swerve. Whoever it was wasn't going to stop. The gas station felt miles away. My heart was in my throat. Sweat ran down my face and back as I pushed the truck harder, ignoring the strange noises coming from the engine. Finally, the bright lights of the station appeared through the trees. Relief hit me, but it was mixed with fear. I parked as close to the front door as I could, jumped out and ran inside. There were a few people inside. The cashier looked up at me like I was crazy, but I didn't care. I told them I needed help and they called the sheriff. When the deputy arrived, I pointed to the road I had come from. We drove slowly back, the truck behind us this time, and I could see nothing. No footprints, no abandoned car, no one hiding in the trees. It was like everything I had seen disappeared the moment I reached safety. The deputy didn't laugh, didn't dismiss me. He just said sometimes people get scared on those back roads at night, and sometimes things look different than they really are when the darkness settles in. I stayed with my truck that night until it was safe to drive home, and I haven't taken that road again since. Months later, I heard from someone else in town about a missing person, a man who had been last seen walking along a back road near where I had been. They never found him. Sometimes when I drive at night, I still see those flashes in the trees in my mind, or that man standing in the road, waiting. I'll never know who he was or what he wanted, but I know I made it out because I didn't stop, because I trusted my gut. That night taught me something simple but sharp. Some dangers don't need ghosts or monsters to be real. They're just there, quiet, patient, and they don't show themselves to everyone. You notice them if you're paying attention. I learned to trust the small warnings, the wrong headlights, the shifting shadows, the sudden silence. I learned to keep moving when I had to, even when every instinct screamed to stop. And most importantly, I learned that survival isn't about bravery or luck. It's about noticing the little things before they turn into a trap. Since then, I take the long way home. I stick to the roads I know. But even now, years later, when I drive at night and the wind pushes through the trees, I can feel it again, the small tingle that tells you something is just beyond the light. I don't panic anymore. I just keep driving. I was driving down a back road in northern Alabama, a stretch of Highway 278 that wound through thick pine forests and endless fields. It was late, later than I usually stayed on the road, and the sky was a deep, oppressive black. The only light came from my headlights cutting through the fog that had rolled in overnight. There were no streetlights, no other cars, nothing moving but the occasional deer that froze in the beam of my headlights before darting off into the underbrush. I'd been hauling a load from Birmingham to Huntsville, a routine trip I'd done dozens of times, but something about that night felt different. Maybe it was the silence that had settled over everything like a blanket, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest and makes your ears ring. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights following me, but there was nothing. Just the endless stretch of black asphalt disappearing into the trees. About an hour in, my truck's engine started to sputter. I cursed under my breath, fiddling with the gear shift, trying to keep it steady. The gauges all looked normal, but the engine felt wrong, uneven. Then the lights in the dashboard flickered, and the truck slowed on its own, like something had cut the power. My heart thumped hard against my ribs. I tapped the gas, then tried the brake, and the truck groaned but didn't respond fully. I managed to coast to the side of the road, the shoulder soft with mud from last week's rain. The fog had thickened, curling around the truck like smoke, hiding the tree line and the ditch beside me. I climbed out, the cold biting through my jacket, and looked under the hood. Nothing obvious. I had a feeling I'd just have to wait, but waiting in the middle of nowhere, Alabama at 2 in the morning didn't sit right with me. I pulled out my phone, no signal. That didn't surprise me, but it added to the weight pressing on my chest. I'd have to walk, try to get to a gas station or find another vehicle. But as I started down the road, the fog seemed to thicken in front of me. Shapes appeared, tall, dark forms at the edge of the tree line, shifting as if they were watching me. I blinked and they were gone. I told myself it was just shadows, just my imagination, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave. I walked for what felt like forever, my boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. The forest was dense here, pine needles and leaves muffling my steps. Then I heard it, a slow, dragging sound like metal scraping across concrete, only there was no concrete, just dirt and gravel. My head whipped around and I saw a truck, a beat-up old flatbed, parked halfway in the trees. Its headlights were off, but there was movement around it, shadows shifting inside. I froze, trying to convince myself it was just someone fixing a flat or waiting out the fog. But the dragging sound came closer and then I realized what it was. A man or something was moving behind that truck, just out of sight, slow, deliberate. My stomach dropped. I should have run, I should have called for help, but my legs wouldn't move. My mind raced. Who waits in the woods on a back road like this? Who drags something in the middle of the night? Then I saw it, a figure stepping out from behind the truck, tall, muscular, wearing a dirty jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He didn't speak. He just looked at me. And I knew instantly I wasn't dealing with someone lost or stranded. This was deliberate. Predatory. I stepped back, heart hammering, and my eyes caught the bed of the flatbed. There were tire tracks leading up into the woods and something in the back covered with a tarp moving slightly. Not alive moving, but the way a body moves when it's carried wrong, heavy and stiff. My stomach lurched. I turned to run back to my truck, but he took a step forward, and the fog seemed to swallow the distance between us. I didn't stop. I ran, arms pumping, lungs screaming, boots slipping on wet mud. I dove into the truck, slammed the door and locked it. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life on the third try and I gunned it, tires spinning on the wet shoulder before I caught the road. I kept driving, eyes darting to the rearview mirror, half expecting him to appear behind me, and for the first time in my life, I was praying the dark forest would just end. It didn't end quickly. The road twisted, narrow and treacherous, lined by trees that seemed to lean in as if to grab the truck. I could see headlights flickering in the mirror, but it wasn't consistent, just shadows, the fog playing tricks on me. My hands were slick on the wheel, sweat and fear mixing together, heart still racing like a hammer. Finally, I saw lights up ahead, the dim orange glow of a gas station, a beacon in the suffocating dark. Relief surged through me, but I didn't let off the gas. I skidded into the parking lot, slamming the truck into park. The lights inside were on, a man behind the counter nodding at me, probably wondering what the hell I looked like. I didn't care. I jumped out, ran inside and locked the door behind me, shaking, my chest heaving. The attendant came over, cautious, asking if I was okay. I could barely speak, just pointing outside toward the road. He followed my gaze and then I saw it again, the shadows. The figure was gone. No flatbed. No dragging. Nothing. Just the road stretching into the black woods. I sat there for a long time, trying to calm down, trying to tell myself I hadn't imagined it. But the feeling of being watched didn't leave me. I called the police from the gas station, explained what I'd seen, but by the time they got out there was nothing. No footprints, no truck, no sign of anyone. The officer just gave me that look you get when you tell a story nobody else can confirm, and I knew he thought I was exaggerating or hallucinating. Eventually I got back on the road, but I didn't take that stretch again. I rerouted, drove through small towns and well-lit highways, anywhere I could see the horizon. It stayed dark that night, but the road felt safer, more open. I kept my phone in my hand, ready to dial at the first sign of trouble. Weeks later, I read a short news piece buried in the back pages of the local paper. Some man had been arrested in the area, old, violent, had a record for abduction and assault. Authorities found a hidden spot in the woods along Highway 278 with evidence of multiple bodies, hidden in shallow graves. I didn't know if that was him or if he'd even been near me that night, but I knew my instincts had been right. I had driven straight past a man who would have killed me if I'd slowed, if I'd looked back. The rest of that trip haunted me for months. Every time I passed a dark stretch of road, my hands tightened on the wheel, my eyes scanning the tree line for movement. I didn't sleep well for weeks, replaying that figure, the dragging sound, the flatbed half hidden in the fog. But I survived, and that became the only clear, good ending I could cling to, the knowledge that I made it out. I still drive those routes now, but I never take the shortcuts, never drive those back roads at night. And when the fog rolls in thick, I make sure I'm not alone, that I'm visible, that I have a way to call for help. That night taught me something about fear, about instinct, about paying attention when the world feels wrong. Most people would dismiss it as a nightmare, a trick of the mind. But I know what I saw. And I know how close I came to not making it out at all. I had driven through Alabama enough times to know the backroads could be both beautiful and dangerous. That night, I was coming home from a long week in Montgomery, tired and eager to get back to my small town. I had taken a shortcut I hadn't used in years. A narrow, winding road that cut through the woods and past old, abandoned farmland. The kind of road that seemed safe enough during the day but took on a different feel after dark. It was past 11 when I turned off the main highway. The streetlights disappeared almost immediately, and my headlights barely cut through the thick blackness. Trees lined both sides of the road, their branches reaching over the asphalt and forming dark arches that made the road feel like a tunnel. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling in my stomach, blaming it on the late hour and my fatigue. I kept my eyes on the road and my foot steady on the gas pedal. The air in the car was heavy and still. I could hear the hum of the tires on the pavement and the occasional rustle of leaves when the wind caught them. I passed the old Jenkins farm, a place I remembered as a kid. The house had been boarded up for years, the paint peeling, windows broken. Even in the daytime it gave off a creepy vibe. Tonight, under the dim light of my headlights, it looked abandoned in a way that made me tense. Something about it felt wrong, like the air around it had been holding on to the silence for decades. I quickly turned my attention back to the road. A little further down, the road narrowed even more. The pavement was cracked and uneven, with potholes that made the car bump in a way that was more alarming than usual. The woods pressed in closer, and every time I passed a curve, the darkness seemed to shift, almost as if something was moving just outside my headlights. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just deer, maybe, or the play of shadows, but my chest was tight, and my hands were gripping the steering wheel too hard. Then I saw the first sign. A figure, hunched and unmoving, standing at the edge of the road. At first, I thought it was a tree stump or a pile of old clothing, but as I got closer, I realized it was a person. I slammed on the brakes, and the car skidded a little on the worn asphalt. My heart was pounding. The figure didn't move. It just stood there like it had been waiting for me. I didn't want to stop, didn't want to even slow down too much, but the road was narrow and going around it felt dangerous too. I finally nudged the wheel to the left and passed, keeping my eyes locked on the dark figure in my rearview mirror. It didn't move. It didn't even flinch. I tried to convince myself it was a hitchhiker or someone trying to scare people, but the way they were standing, just staring at the road, felt deliberate. Something in me screamed to get out of there, but I was already committed, and the nearest town was still miles away. I pressed the accelerator and forced myself to focus on the road. My car's headlights barely reached past the next curve, and every time I rounded one, I expected another figure to appear. The next stretch of road was worse. The trees leaned in even closer, and the asphalt was dotted with deep cracks and holes. I had to drive carefully to avoid damaging the car, but the tension in my shoulders made it hard to concentrate. Then I noticed something moving along the edge of the woods just out of the light. It was fast, darting from tree to tree. At first, I thought it was an animal, maybe a raccoon or a fox, but it moved differently, too deliberate, too human-like. My stomach dropped, and I instinctively slowed down. My headlights caught a glimpse of a face, pale and blurred, ducking back into the shadows. Panic set in. I considered turning around, but the narrow road and dense trees made it impossible to see far enough back to make a safe U-turn. I told myself to stay calm, that I was probably overreacting, that the road had always felt like this at night. But my heart was hammering, and I could feel sweat running down my back. I tried to focus on the small reassurance that the road would eventually open onto the highway. Just keep going. Minutes dragged on like hours. The road seemed endless, twisting and turning through the dark forest. Every crack in the pavement made my teeth clench, every rustle in the trees made me jump. And then I heard it, footsteps. Slow at first, then faster, coming from the woods on my right. They matched my speed as if someone or something was keeping pace with the car. I told myself it had to be the wind or an animal, but the rhythm of the steps was unmistakable, almost too coordinated to be random. I felt my grip on the wheel tighten. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. I didn't know if I could escape whatever was out there. I floored the accelerator, my headlights cutting through the night like a knife, and hoped the speed would keep me safe. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, it was silent except for the engine and my ragged breathing. Then a shadow moved across the road ahead of me, a large, hunched figure. I swerved hard to avoid it, tires squealing, heart in my throat. My car hit the soft edge of the road and the wheel jerked. The figure disappeared into the woods again. I didn't look back. I just drove faster and faster until the trees started to thin and the road widened. The oppressive darkness lifted a little as I saw the lights of the highway in the distance. I almost couldn't believe it, almost felt like I had been trapped in that black tunnel forever. By the time I reached the highway, I was shaking, my hands stiff from gripping the wheel, my mind racing. I slowed down and took deep breaths, trying to calm myself. The normal streetlights, the hum of other cars, the smell of asphalt in the night. It all felt like safety. I kept driving, but I didn't relax fully until I was back on the familiar roads near my town. Later, I learned that the stretch of back road I had driven was known for something unsettling. There had been reports of people being attacked or harassed late at night, some of them never seen again. No one could explain it fully. Some said it was local gangs, some said it was just weirdos hiding in the woods. I didn't care about the details. What mattered to me was that I had gotten out. I had driven through the nightmare and survived. I never took that shortcut again. I stopped driving late at night through unfamiliar backroads. The memory of that night, the dark figures, the footsteps that matched my speed, it stayed with me. But I also learned something important. Sometimes survival isn't about fighting or confronting danger. It's about staying calm, making smart decisions, and keeping your wits. That night, I had kept my eyes on the road, kept moving, and I had made it through. And for the first time in years, I realized that sometimes getting home safely is a victory in itself. Even now, when I drive past that old Jenkins farm in the daytime, I feel a shiver run through me. But it's different. It's not fear for my life, it's respect for how close I came to losing it. That night taught me that danger can be silent, sudden, and real. And it also taught me that I could handle it, that I could survive it, and that in a world where so much is unpredictable, making it home, that's the real ending worth celebrating. I remember that night like it happened yesterday, though it's been years. I was driving back home through the back roads of northern Alabama, roads I had driven 1,000 times, but somehow that night felt different. The sun had long since disappeared behind the trees, leaving the world in a thick, suffocating darkness. The only light came from my truck's headlights cutting through the blackness and the occasional flicker of fireflies, faint and scattered like tiny warnings I didn't understand yet. I was hauling a load of lumber from a small sawmill up near the Tennessee line, a run I had done countless times without incident. But that night, the air itself felt heavy, like something was pressing down on the world. I'd taken a shortcut, the kind most truckers avoided because the asphalt was uneven, and branches from overgrown trees scratched against the sides of your truck as if the woods themselves were alive. I'd been on this stretch for maybe 20 minutes when I noticed the first sign that something wasn't right. A deer, or at least I thought it was, darted across the road ahead. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching, and the truck skidded slightly on a patch of loose gravel. The deer, if it was one, vanished too quickly, leaving only the sound of my own heartbeat and the faint rustle of leaves. I shook my head, muttering at myself for being jumpy. I'd driven this road hundreds of times and never seen anything unusual. But as I continued, the woods on either side seemed to grow darker, denser, as if they were swallowing the weak beam of my headlights. Shadows stretched and twisted in ways that didn't make sense. I tried to focus on the road, keeping my eyes forward, but my peripheral vision kept catching movement. Something was always at the edge, and every time I turned my head, nothing was there. Just the trees. Always the trees. I reached a long stretch of road that ran along a shallow creek. The water reflected the dim light of the moon, but even that glow felt muted, as if the night itself had taken a deep breath and held it. That's when I noticed the tire tracks. They weren't fresh, not exactly. They were deeper, wider, and unlike anything I'd seen before. Someone or something had driven along this path recently, and the tracks led straight into the woods on the right side of the road. I slowed, curious and uneasy. My gut told me to keep going, but a part of me, a darker part, wanted to see what had made those tracks. I parked the truck on the shoulder, leaving the engine running. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that makes your shirt stick to your back. I grabbed a flashlight from the cab and stepped out, boots sinking slightly into the damp dirt. The woods were silent, eerily so. No crickets, no frogs, nothing but the faint gurgle of the creek. The tracks were easy to follow at first, pressing into the muddy bank. Then they disappeared. Just like that. The dirt and leaves ahead looked untouched, like no one had walked there in years. That alone made my stomach twist. I turned back toward the truck, telling myself I'd imagined it. Maybe the moonlight had played tricks on me. But then I heard it, a sound so low and subtle I almost didn't catch it. A scraping. Like metal on wood, slow, deliberate. It came from deeper in the trees, past where the tracks had ended. I froze, flashlight trembling in my hand. My brain screamed at me to run, to get back in the truck, but I couldn't move. It wasn't the kind of fear that made you scream, it was the kind that pressed against your chest, slow and suffocating, and made your blood run cold. I took a cautious step forward. Another scraping. Closer now. The trees seemed to lean toward me, branches clawing at my jacket. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to see. A hunter? A lost traveler? But the sound had a rhythm, like someone or something was working on a piece of furniture, dragging something heavy across the ground. My mind raced. I considered calling the police, but there was no cell service out here, not even a single bar. I realized I was completely isolated. The closest house was at least 10 miles back the way I had come, and the nearest town was even farther. My truck, my only lifeline, sat idling a few yards behind me, headlights piercing the darkness, but it offered little comfort. I decided to turn back slowly, keeping my flashlight aimed toward the road. That's when I saw it. Not a person, not an animal, but a vehicle. An old, rusted pickup truck, barely visible through the trees, parked at a strange angle, like it had skidded off the road and left its driver somewhere. The scraping sound stopped immediately, replaced by a tense silence. I felt a wave of relief mixed with a deeper unease. The truck looked abandoned, but the doors were slightly open, swinging gently in the humid night air. I couldn't explain why, but I felt drawn toward it, compelled to look closer. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe fear of the unknown. Either way, I took a few steps forward, and that's when the smell hit me. Rot. Earthy, metallic, overwhelming. My stomach lurched. The smell wasn't natural. I spun my flashlight toward the pickup and noticed the bed was full of debris, old tools, boards, and something else I couldn't identify at first. Then I saw it. Fresh blood stains on the boards, smears leading into the woods. My heart stopped. Not animal blood, human. And the tracks I had seen earlier, they weren't from the pickup. They were from a person dragging something heavy into the trees. The realization slammed into me like a punch. I stumbled back toward my truck, adrenaline kicking in, legs weak but moving. I jumped into the cab, slammed the door and locked it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. I sat there for a moment, trying to catch my breath, listening. Nothing. Just the night. But the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. I didn't need any more signs. I knew I had to leave. I pulled out onto the road, tires crunching gravel, and I didn't slow down until I reached a more open highway. Only when I saw the familiar glow of a gas station in the distance did I let my body relax even a fraction. I called the sheriff from the station. They took my statement, promised to investigate, but when I tried to go back the next day, the pickup was gone. No tracks, no signs, nothing. Like it had vanished into the night. I never did find out what happened, and I never went back down that stretch of road. Even now, years later, every time I'm driving late at night through Alabama backroads, I remember that night. The feeling of the darkness pressing in, the scrape of metal in the trees, the smell of blood that wasn't mine, it sticks with you. It's a part of the road now, a reminder that some things in the woods aren't meant to be found. And while I survived, I know that whatever left those tracks, whatever was in that rusted pickup, was still out there waiting. I learned something important that night. Fear isn't always about what you can see. Sometimes, it's about what you can sense, the little things your mind doesn't want to accept. And sometimes, leaving is the only way to survive. I never went back, and I never will, because some roads in Alabama are better left untouched and some nights are better left behind. I was hauling a load from Birmingham down to Mobile one late September night. The highway was almost empty. a ribbon of black asphalt cutting through fields that stretched for miles under a moon I could barely see through the thick, low-hanging clouds. The air was heavy, humid, carrying the smell of wet dirt and decaying leaves from the recent rain. I had just finished a long stretch of driving and had the truck humming along at a steady 70 miles an hour, headlights slicing through the darkness, when I noticed the first sign that something was off. It wasn't the road itself. Alabama backroads are almost always uneven, patched over 100 times with potholes that catch you when you least expect it. It wasn't even the isolation. I'd driven these highways hundreds of times, often at night, and the solitude was part of the rhythm. What caught my eye first was movement at the edge of the headlights, a shadow that seemed too deliberate to be just a deer or a stray dog. I slowed a little, squinting. The shadow moved closer to the road just inside the treeline, a figure that looked human but wrong. I shook my head. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks after so many hours on the road. My mind tried to rationalize it. Someone walking on the shoulder of a deserted highway this late wasn't unusual, but something about the posture, the way it lingered at the edge of the light, made my skin crawl. I passed it without incident and focused on the road ahead, but the feeling didn't go away. The night seemed louder, the hum of the truck's engine too sharp. The rain had stopped, but the air smelled of wet asphalt and something else, something metallic, faint but unmistakable. I rolled the window down to get some air, hoping it would clear my mind. A breeze hit my face, but it wasn't refreshing. It was sharp, carrying with it the kind of smell that sticks in your nose and sets your nerves on edge. A few miles later, I came across a section of highway under construction. There were no lights except for the reflective cones and signs, which made everything beyond them almost invisible. I slowed to navigate through the narrow lanes. That's when I saw it again. A figure standing in the middle of the lane ahead. At first, I thought it was someone waving for help, maybe a stranded motorist. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't moving, not in a normal way. Its stance was rigid, almost unnatural. My stomach dropped. I slammed on the brakes, skidding slightly on the wet asphalt, and the figure didn't move. My heart was pounding. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, and realized I couldn't see any features, nothing except the dark silhouette. I tried to edge around it, but then headlights flashed behind me. Another vehicle, a pickup, was coming fast from the rear. I had to move, so I swerved into the left lane, narrowly avoiding the figure. My tires squealed, the truck shaking under me. When I looked in the side mirror, it was gone. Just gone, like it had never been there. Shaken, I kept driving, eyes darting to the treeline on either side of the road. My hands were clammy on the wheel. I told myself it was someone hiding in the shadows, maybe a prankster or even a hunter. But nothing made sense. The nearest town was over 20 miles back, and there was no sign of a car parked. No flashlight, no noise except the hum of my engine and the sound of tires on wet asphalt. I passed a small, abandoned gas station. Its windows were broken, the pumps rusted over, weeds growing up through the cracks in the concrete. I didn't slow down, just kept my eyes on the road. But the moment I passed it, I caught something in the rearview mirror. A reflection, maybe. At first, I thought it was a trick of the glass, but then I realized it was another figure standing at the edge of the tree line, watching. It didn't move, didn't react to the truck, just watched. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but my phone service was patchy in this stretch of highway. I tried anyway, dialing the truck company's dispatch. The call went straight to voicemail. My stomach knotted tighter. I thought about stopping, maybe backing up and checking the gas station, but something inside told me to keep moving. The feeling in my gut was a mix of fear and instinct. Sometimes your body just knows when something is off, and this was one of those times. The next stretch was even worse. The highway narrowed, bordered by dense forest on both sides. The trees leaned over the road, forming tunnels of shadow. The darkness felt thick, almost physical. That's when I saw it again, but this time closer on the shoulder, pacing slowly as if waiting for me. I slammed on the brakes and the truck groaned under the sudden stop. The figure froze, then stepped back into the darkness. My hands shook as I gripped the wheel, eyes darting from side to side. I decided I wasn't going to stop. Not here, not alone. I shifted into gear and pressed the accelerator, focusing on the beam of the headlights cutting through the black. Every mile felt like hours. My pulse was hammering, my knuckles white. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I kept telling myself it was just someone messed up, maybe drunk, or a kid playing a prank. But the precision of the movements, the way it had waited, disappeared, then appeared again, it wasn't normal. After what felt like an eternity, I saw the lights of a town ahead. Mobile. Civilization. I slowed as I entered the city limits. the presence of people and streetlights grounding me again. The tension in my shoulders eased slightly, though my eyes still darted to every shadow. By the time I pulled into the truck stop, I was shaking, drenched in sweat despite the humid night air. I parked in a well-lit corner far from the road and stayed in the cab for a long while trying to calm down. Eventually, I got out, walked around the truck, checking tires, mirrors, making sure nothing was damaged. Nothing. No sign of anyone. No footprints, no marks on the asphalt, nothing. It was as if the entire stretch of highway had swallowed them up. I reported the strange figures to dispatch just in case, but I didn't expect much. Late-night sightings on Alabama highways aren't unheard of, and most are shrugged off as drunks, hunters, or wild animals. The next morning, I drove back the same route in daylight. The road was empty, mundane, completely ordinary. No abandoned figures in the shadows, no pacing shapes at the edge of the forest. Only the cracked asphalt, the familiar lines of the highway, and the occasional deer in the distance. It was frustrating, almost angering, how the night had twisted everything into fear. But the sense of relief was immense. I learned a few things that night. 1. Never underestimate your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. 2. Alabama backroads are beautiful in the day but can hide things at night you'll never explain. And 3. Sometimes the scariest things aren't supernatural. They're real, they're human, and they're closer than you think, just lurking at the edges where your headlights can't reach. I never saw those figures again, and I've never been able to explain them. But I always take the same precautions now: keep the truck moving, stick to well-lit areas, and never stop for shadows at the edge of the road. I still drive those highways regularly, sometimes thinking about that night. And each time, a little voice in the back of my mind reminds me, the world is full of people who shouldn't be out there, waiting, watching, and sometimes you're lucky if you get to see the dawn. That night ended well because I made it to Mobile without incident after that final stretch. But the memory lingers: the shadows, the pacing figure, the way the dark felt alive. I don't know what it was, and I don't want to. All I know is I trusted myself, kept my focus, and didn't give in to the impulse to stop in the wrong place. That choice made all the difference. It was one of those late summer nights in northern Alabama where the heat hangs in the air even after the sun has gone down. The kind of night that makes everything feel slow and heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. I had just finished a long day working on my uncle's farm, hauling feed and fixing fences that had warped in the summer heat. My truck, an old Ford that rattled and groaned in a way I'd gotten used to over the years, was my only way back to my place in the small town of Coleman. The roads out there are narrow, lined with thick woods and long stretches of nothing, the kind of roads where you can go for miles without seeing another car or even a house. I left the farm around 8, the sun already gone behind the tree line, leaving a deep purple twilight over the fields. The insects were loud tonight, filling the air with their high-pitched, constant drone. I drove slow because the road was littered with potholes and patches of gravel that could throw the truck off if I wasn't careful. The radio was off. I liked it quiet. I liked hearing the tires crunch over the broken asphalt and the occasional rustle of something moving in the woods. It felt alive, though in a tense way, like the night was watching me as I drove through it. About 15 minutes into the drive, I noticed something strange. Up ahead, just past a sharp bend where the road dips into a shallow creek bed, I saw a pair of headlights. They were parked in the middle of the road, angled slightly as if whoever was in the vehicle had stopped without concern for anything behind them. At first, I thought it might be someone broken down, needing help. I slowed, keeping my distance. The truck's engine hummed quietly, and I could hear my own breathing, steady but tense. The headlights weren't moving, and the faint orange glow from the dashboard lights reflected off the dirt and dust on the road. As I got closer, I realized the vehicle wasn't abandoned. It was an older model pickup, rusty and dented, sitting there like it had been left intentionally. There was someone inside, though I couldn't make out details at first. The truck wasn't just parked. It was angled in a way that made it hard to pass. My stomach sank. Normally, on these roads you don't see other people at night. Not just randomly sitting in the middle of the road. I thought about turning around, but something made me keep driving closer. Curiosity, maybe, or the stubbornness of having spent my whole life in this area thinking I could handle anything the woods threw at me. As I neared the truck, I caught sight of movement inside. The person was hunched over the steering wheel, but not asleep. They were doing something, shifting in a way that looked deliberate, and I noticed a long, dark bag on the passenger seat. The shape was unnatural, too rigid to be just a backpack or tools. My heart started pounding and I felt a cold trickle of sweat on the back of my neck. Something about the scene didn't sit right. I slowed the truck even more, my hands gripping the wheel tight, and my mind started racing through all the worst-case scenarios. Suddenly, the truck's engine roared to life. The headlights cut straight down the road, blinding me for a second as they pointed directly at me. The other vehicle moved slowly, but it didn't turn onto another road. It started following me, matching my speed perfectly. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, maybe someone just driving down the same route, but the angle they kept, like they were keeping me in sight intentionally, made my stomach twist into knots. I floored the gas, the truck jerking as it shifted gears. The dirt road kicked up behind me, rocks bouncing off the undercarriage. I could hear the other engine behind me, relentless, the sound echoing against the tree line like something alive. Panic was creeping in. I had driven these roads 1,000 times, but never like this. Normally, the only thing out here was deer or the occasional stray dog. Now it was clear. Someone was following me and I had no idea why. The road curved sharply again, dipping down toward the creek. I could see the faint glow of my headlights reflecting on water from the low bank. And for a moment, I considered swerving down the side road that led to an old logging trail. But I knew it was too narrow, probably impossible to navigate at speed. I stayed on the main road, praying the person behind me would make a mistake. Then, without warning, something slammed against the side of my truck. I screamed, the impact jarring me as the metal dented and scraped. The truck wobbled and I struggled to keep it straight. I glanced in the rearview mirror and for a split second I thought I saw a figure hanging out of the other truck, hitting me with some kind of object. My adrenaline spiked, my chest heaving, and I made a snap decision. I turned hard onto the soft shoulder, the tires digging into the loose gravel and grass, sending my truck skidding sideways. The other vehicle followed, but the uneven terrain slowed it. Rocks and dirt flew into the air as I kept pushing forward, down a stretch of road that curved deeper into the woods. By now I was beyond scared. My mind was a haze of terror and disbelief. I could hear branches snapping as my tires tore through overgrown grass, but I kept moving, knowing I had to put as much distance between us as possible. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the road opened into a small clearing. I slammed the brakes, the truck skidding to a stop, dust clouding the air. My heart was hammering in my chest, every muscle shaking. I waited, straining to hear the other engine. The truck never came. Silence fell, heavy and complete, except for the chirping of crickets and the occasional rustle of a raccoon in the underbrush. I sat there for several minutes, unsure if I should even move, until I realized I needed to get back to somewhere safe. Slowly, cautiously, I backed up the way I had come, keeping my eyes peeled. Nothing followed. Eventually, the road widened again and I made it back to the main highway, where the streetlights were faint but comforting. I pulled into a gas station, my hands still shaking, and called my uncle. He didn't answer, so I left a voicemail. I stayed in that lit area for nearly an hour, watching the dark roads behind me, until the adrenaline finally began to fade. I didn't see the truck again, and I didn't take that back road for months. Looking back, I know I was lucky. That person in the truck could have been dangerous, but they never caught up to me. Maybe they got distracted, maybe they turned off the road, maybe they weren't as determined as they seemed. But the fear that night stuck with me for weeks, lingering like a shadow over every drive I took. I realized something then. The woods and back roads of Alabama aren't scary because of ghosts or fairy tales, they're scary because of people. Because in the quiet, endless stretches of nothing, someone with the wrong intentions can appear out of nowhere. In the end, I learned to respect that quiet, to pay attention to every sound, every movement. I installed new locks on the truck doors, kept my phone charged and in reach, and avoided the back roads alone at night. And while the fear never fully left me, I carried it as a warning rather than a curse. Because in life, you survive the scary nights not by running from shadows, but by noticing the real threats when they show themselves and being smart enough to get out before it's too late. I was hauling a load from Birmingham down to Mobile on a Thursday night, a quiet stretch of road where trucks like mine were the only moving things for miles. The sky was overcast, the kind that makes the night feel thicker, heavier. Rain had started earlier in the evening, leaving the asphalt slick and reflective. My rig was loaded with freight that smelled faintly of pine and cardboard, nothing fancy, just another shipment, but it was late and I was tired. I had planned to take a short nap at a rest stop before hitting the highway again, but all the usual stops were packed or closed. So I kept driving, eyes straining against the dim glow of the headlights cutting through the mist. Somewhere past Montgomery, the road narrowed. Pine trees pressed close to the shoulders, and the road dipped and twisted like a snake. My rig rumbled over a small pothole, and the vibration ran up my spine. It was one of those stretches where you start noticing the silence between the sounds, the quiet after the rain hitting the roof, the hum of the tires, the occasional splash of water kicked up from the ruts. Out here, it felt like the road belonged to no one, like it had swallowed all the towns and people behind me. Then I saw it. Or maybe I didn't at first. There was a shape at the edge of the road, just past a curve, half hidden by the mist. At first, I thought it was a deer, maybe a raccoon. I slowed down, my hands tightening on the wheel. The shape was tall, unnaturally still. I flipped on my brights for a second and caught a better look. It wasn't an animal. It was a person, or at least someone in clothes that were wet and muddy, standing in the middle of the lane. I slammed on the brakes. The truck fishtailed slightly on the wet asphalt, and my heart jumped into my throat. The figure didn't move. My headlight illuminated them fully. Soaked jeans, a dark hoodie, boots caked in mud. I couldn't see a face. I eased off the brakes slowly, wondering if they would step out of the way. They didn't. I leaned on the horn. A sharp, long blast echoed off the trees. The figure didn't flinch. That's when I realized something worse. They weren't just standing there, they were facing me. Waiting. I felt my chest tighten. I had to decide fast, and I didn't want to run them over, but I didn't want to stop either. The truck was heavy loaded. I swerved slightly onto the shoulder, trying to give them room. The tires scraped the gravel, sending stones bouncing against the frame. The figure moved, but not away from me. They moved along the edge, keeping pace with the truck as I drove. Panic started to settle in. My mind went through the small towns, the deserted gas stations, the stories I'd heard over CB radios. People out here sometimes went missing or worse. I could imagine someone following a truck, waiting for the right moment. I wasn't sure if that was happening, but the feeling in my gut said it was. I tried to keep calm. I looked for a place to pull over, a populated area, a well-lit gas station. Nothing. Just miles of dark road and the figure keeping pace. I sped up. Not too fast, these roads were slick, but enough to test if they would actually follow. And they did. The figure didn't run, they just walked, slow, steady, keeping up. My truck's engine growled, tires hissing on wet asphalt. My hands were sweaty, my knuckles white, gripping the wheel like it could somehow protect me. Every tree looked like it could be another hidden threat, every shadow a hiding place. The stretch went on forever, the headlights cutting a tunnel through the night. I kept telling myself it was someone lost, maybe drunk, trying to cross the road, but something about the way they moved, it was deliberate, not stumbling, not scared, just following, waiting. My phone sat in my lap, dead battery. I cursed myself for not charging it. No cell service. The kind of night where even if someone knew I was out here, it would be hours before anyone could help. I saw it turn off up ahead, a faint light in the distance, probably a gas station. My relief was immediate, a sudden warmth in my chest. I started signaling, trying to think about how to get inside without leaving the truck too exposed. The figure slowed as I approached the light, but didn't stop. My stomach knotted again. Maybe they were heading there too. I reached the gas station, a small 24-hour place with a single pump island and a dimly lit building. I pulled in close to the building, far enough that the figure would have to come into the light to reach me. My engine was still running, my door unlocked, ready to throw it into gear again if needed. The figure hesitated at the edge of the light, and I could finally see them clearly. Not a mask, not a face covered in shadows, just a man, scruffy, wet, probably in his 30s, looking tired and tense. I took a deep breath. He moved closer, but slowly, keeping his hands visible. I kept my eyes on him, ready to react. Something about the tension eased slightly. He was alone, and he wasn't attacking. When he stepped under the gas station light, I could see mud on his pants, cuts and scratches on his arms, like he had been stumbling through the woods. His eyes were wild, alert, but not malicious. I realized he wasn't following me out of intent to harm, he was lost. Probably had been walking the highways for hours, maybe days. Out here, a man could get turned around fast, and the night was merciless. He looked as scared of me as I was of him. Relief and adrenaline hit at the same time. I backed the truck a little toward the pump and shut off the engine, giving him room. He nodded slightly, like he understood the silent offer of safety. I kept my distance but left the door open. He walked up to the pump, shaking, exhausted, and asked quietly if he could use the phone. I nodded and gestured. I stayed in the truck, keeping my eyes on the dark road behind him. The rain had slowed, the mist was lifting, and the hum of the truck cooled in the silence. I waited until he was done calling for help. It was a relative, someone from home, telling them to come get him. I didn't hear everything, but I could see the relief wash over his face. He turned to leave and nodded at me again, a small gesture of thanks. I waved back, the tension finally ebbing away. By the time the tow truck arrived to pick him up, I had started the engine again and pulled back onto the highway. The night no longer felt oppressive. The road, though still dark and slick, felt manageable. I stayed alert, but the fear had shifted into a quiet awareness of how thin the line between danger and relief could be out here. A stranger on a road in the middle of Alabama could be harmless or deadly, and sometimes the only difference was timing and attention. I kept driving toward Mobile, the radio low, the headlights slicing through the last patches of fog. The man was safe now, and I could finally let my shoulders relax. I thought about how easy it would have been for either of us to make a mistake. One wrong swerve, one hesitation, and it could have ended very differently. The road stretched ahead, dark but familiar now. The threat passed, leaving only the steady hum of tires on asphalt and the rain-slick reflection of the moonlight on the wet surface. By the time I rolled into the Mobile truck yard, the night was nearly over, pale light brushing the horizon. I parked the rig, checked the load, and finally exhaled. I knew that tonight, like so many nights on these back roads, I had been lucky. Not lucky in some mystical sense, just careful, alert, and aware. And sometimes, in places like Alabama at night, that was all that stood between you and something far worse than you ever imagined. The man's face stayed in my mind for a long time, a reminder of how fragile our assumptions can be when the dark stretches endlessly around us, and how a simple act of caution or patience could save a life. I made a mental note: keep the phone charged, never drive too tired, and always trust instinct. That night, the road had been scary, yes, but it had also reminded me of the sharp edge between fear and relief, danger and safety. And for once, I had made it through with a clear ending. I had always thought I knew those back roads of northern Alabama like the back of my hand. The kind of roads that cut through dense woods, where the trees lean in close enough that the shadows look alive at night, and where the potholes sneak up on you if you aren't careful. It was the kind of night that made you second-guess leaving the porch light on, but I had somewhere to be, and stubbornness had always been part of my nature. I left my small farmhouse just as the sun was sinking behind the hills, the sky streaked with dull reds and grays. The air smelled of wet earth and the faint smoke of someone burning brush somewhere far off. I was alone, my old Ford pickup rumbling beneath me, its headlights cutting swaths through the dark that felt almost too small to keep the blackness at bay. The first mile was uneventful, just the usual cracks and ruts in the asphalt, the occasional deer darting across the road, startled by the headlights. But I knew better than to relax. In these parts, quiet can be dangerous. People around here talk about accidents, wrong turns, and trucks breaking down miles from anywhere, and I'd always nodded politely, never thinking it could happen to me. But that night, everything felt off. The woods pressed in closer than usual, the tree branches scraping against the metal roof of my truck as if trying to warn me. And the silence. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. About 10 miles in, the engine started coughing. A small, irregular sound at first, almost nothing, but enough to make me tense. I tried to ignore it, but the truck sputtered again, then jerked to a near halt. I cursed under my breath, rolled down the window, and let the cold night air hit my face. The smell of oil and something like burnt rubber seeped through the cab. I knew immediately what was coming. I was about to be stuck, miles from the nearest house. I killed the engine and stepped out. The night was absolute. My headlights illuminated a few yards ahead, but beyond that, it was just darkness. The trees swayed in the wind, and I could hear the sound of small animals scuttling through the leaves. I popped the hood, wincing as the metal groaned under my hands, and tried to figure out what had gone wrong. Nothing obvious. The belts looked fine, the radiator was full, and the battery had some life. But the engine hissed softly, like it was laughing at me, refusing to start. I had to think. I couldn't just sit there. I remembered a little general store a few miles back, the kind that sold gas, snacks, and a little bit of everything, run by a man named Harlan who knew his way around engines. I decided I had to walk. I grabbed my flashlight, checked the roads, and headed back the way I came, boots crunching on gravel. At first, the walk was normal, almost soothing. The wind had picked up slightly, rustling the trees, and I felt my nerves settle just a little. But then I noticed the sound of tires crunching gravel behind me. I froze. I strained my ears. My flashlight bobbed in my hand, making the shadows jump. The truck had been silent, the only sound the wind, and now I was hearing someone else. It wasn't consistent, more like someone driving slowly, pausing, and then moving again. I told myself it was probably another truck, maybe a neighbor returning from somewhere. But in my gut, I knew the roads were empty at this hour. I quickened my pace and the sound followed. Panic set in, but I tried to keep it under control. I stuck to the edges of the road, the flashlight cutting jagged lines through the trees. I thought about hiding in the woods if it came down to it, but the darkness was too thick. Every snap of a branch, every rustle made my heart jump. The road twisted, small hills and sharp turns hiding me and whoever or whatever was behind me, but every time I slowed, the sound of gravel returned. By the time I reached the clearing near Harlan's store, I was sweating despite the cold. The old neon sign flickered weakly, buzzing like an annoyed insect. I ran up the steps and banged on the door, but it was locked. Harlan's truck wasn't outside. My flashlight caught movement on the edge of the treeline. Shadows mostly, but I could have sworn something was watching. My chest ached and my hands shook. I realized then that I had no weapon, nothing to protect myself with, just a flashlight and my stubbornness. I stayed there for what felt like hours, crouched low behind the railings of the store porch, listening. The sound of the tires came again, slower this time, circling the clearing. Whoever it was, they knew I was out here, and that thought made my stomach turn. I considered running back into the woods, but the thought of stumbling in the dark and breaking my leg was worse than facing someone in the truck. I had to think fast. Then, almost as sudden as it had begun, the sound vanished. Silence again, heavy and thick. I waited another 10 minutes, barely breathing. Finally, I risked a peek around the corner. Nothing. My truck was still visible, the engine cold, alone on the dark road. I didn't see the driver or any lights at all. I ran back cautiously, staying low and moving as quietly as I could. The forest seemed less menacing now, less alive, though every shadow still jumped in my peripheral vision. When I got back to the truck, I knelt and checked under the hood again, trying to force the engine to start. Nothing. I was almost ready to give up, my hands greasy and shaking. Then I remembered the tools in the bed, a small repair kit I had thrown in months ago. I checked the spark plugs, cleaned a little grime, tightened a couple of connections, and tried again. The engine coughed and then roared to life. Relief hit me like a wave. I sat there a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, letting the warmth of the truck seep back into my body. I started driving, slowly at first, eyes darting to every curve, every shadow. The road seemed longer, the woods darker, but nothing followed me this time. Eventually, the tree line began to thin, the sky lightening slightly with the early hints of dawn. I could see the familiar outline of the main highway, the kind of road that had lights and other cars. I exhaled fully for the first time, feeling the tension leave my shoulders. By the time I reached a gas station and filled up, I realized something about that night. Fear doesn't have to come from monsters or shadows. It can come from being alone, stuck, and powerless in the middle of nowhere, from the thought that someone could be watching, waiting for you to make a mistake. I thought about that as I sat in the glow of the fluorescent lights, sipping coffee, engine humming steadily, the dark woods finally behind me. It wasn't a ghost story. It wasn't fairy tales or folklore. It was just a night where the back roads reminded me how small and vulnerable I really was. And I survived. I learned something about paying attention, about respecting the land, the night, and the road. That night, I didn't just drive back into town. I drove back with a new sense of caution, a new respect for the quiet, and a story that would remind me how easily things could go wrong and how much it mattered to keep moving forward. By the time I reached my own porch again, sunlight was spilling across the yard, painting the world in warm, golden hues. I checked the truck one last time, walking around it, tapping the tires, feeling the metal under my hands. Everything was fine. Normal. Nothing had followed me. No danger, no one else, no storybook ending. Just me, a cold night, and the back roads that felt just a little more alive than they did before. I made coffee, sat down, and let myself finally relax. I was safe. The fear was gone, and I had my life back. That clarity, that simple, solid ending was better than any story could give me. It started on a late October evening, just after sundown, when the sky had turned a deep, bruised purple, and the last traces of sunlight were slipping behind the dense pine forests that lined the backroads near my hometown in Alabama. I had been driving a beat-up Ford F-150 I inherited from my uncle, the one with a stubborn heater and a squeaky passenger door. I wasn't supposed to be out that late, but I had been restless all day, staring at the walls of my small apartment and thinking about the upcoming winter, and the thought of being alone on the road somehow felt freeing. The highway I chose was the kind that locals call the Old Blacktop, narrow with no streetlights, and lined on either side by thick woods that seemed to swallow the horizon. The first hour of the drive was uneventful. The only sounds were the low hum of my tires on the asphalt and the occasional rustle of leaves from a breeze I couldn't feel in the cab. Every now and then the headlights caught a deer's eyes reflecting bright green before it darted into the woods. I kept my speed moderate, around 55, because even though the road looked safe enough, I knew from experience that the shadows could hide deep potholes or broken down vehicles, and in Alabama at night help often came slowly, if at all. About 90 minutes in, the road narrowed even further. The trees leaned in, almost touching overhead, and the asphalt began to crack in a way that suggested it hadn't been maintained in decades. That's when I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the road. At first I thought it was a hitchhiker. I slowed down instinctively, curiosity mixed with caution. But there was something wrong. The figure didn't move as I approached. Its posture was rigid, and the way it stood there, shoulders hunched, made it look less human, more like a scarecrow someone had thrown out by the roadside. My stomach twisted. I passed without slowing too much, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the figure was still watching, even though my rearview mirror showed nothing. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was just someone walking along the road, maybe lost, maybe drunk. But the unease grew heavier when about 10 minutes later, I noticed tire tracks in the dirt shoulder of the road. Fresh tire tracks, wide and deep, suggesting a large vehicle had passed not long before me. They weren't from a truck like mine, they were bigger, deeper, like the tires of a work truck or a heavy SUV. I hadn't seen another vehicle since I turned onto this stretch. My heart started to beat faster, and I kept glancing into the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights. There was nothing. Just the endless dark road behind me. Then the truck's headlights caught something else, this time moving. At first I thought it was an animal, maybe a raccoon or a stray dog. But it was too big, too purposeful. I caught glimpses of it darting along the treeline, always just at the edge of visibility. I could hear it too, faint but distinct. The snap of broken branches, leaves crunching under heavy feet moving parallel to my truck. Panic started to bubble in my chest, a physical hot pressure that made my hands tighten on the wheel. I told myself it was impossible, that no human or animal could keep pace with me, that my imagination was exaggerating the sounds of the forest. But even as I rationalized, I could feel the tension building, like the air was charged with something unseen. By the time I reached the old bridge over Blackwater Creek, the darkness had become almost suffocating. The moon had disappeared behind clouds, and my headlights barely illuminated the crumbling wooden planks of the bridge. I slowed even more, trying to focus on the texture of the road under my tires. That's when I saw the truck in my side mirror. A large black SUV, unmarked, no headlights on, but it was there. The headlights on my F-150 reflected in its windows. It wasn't moving in the way normal cars move, it seemed to float behind me, never accelerating or slowing, just following. My chest tightened. My pulse was a drumbeat in my ears, and my mind raced for any reason why this could be happening. Maybe someone was following me, maybe it was a coincidence. But the way it kept pace exactly made it impossible to ignore. I tried everything to shake it. I took side roads I knew, barely more than dirt paths through the woods, places where the asphalt disappeared and the shoulder fell away into undergrowth. But every time it was there, waiting, following. My hands were shaking, the steering wheel slick with sweat. I started looking for any place to stop, any place where I could see who was behind me. But the road offered nothing, no houses, no lights, just the oppressive forest closing in on either side. I realized then that if this was a trap, there might be no one around to notice. No one to help. Hours seemed to pass. Time distorted in that dark, claustrophobic stretch of highway. I forced myself to breathe, to keep calm, and then I saw a glimmer of hope. An old gas station sign, flickering weakly, appeared ahead. I didn't remember ever seeing it during the day, but maybe that was a blessing. The pumps were abandoned, the lights barely functional, but it was somewhere to stop and get a better sense of my surroundings. I pulled in, heart hammering, tires crunching on gravel, and killed the engine. Silence enveloped me immediately. The following SUV was gone. I sat there for what felt like minutes, listening to the wind rattling the old metal sign, the creak murmuring in the distance, trying to convince myself I was imagining everything. But I knew better. I stepped out of the truck carefully, staying low, moving quietly to the front of my vehicle where I could see the road. The forest seemed to press in from all sides. There was no sign of anyone, no vehicle tracks beyond the old SUV's faint traces. I walked around the truck, peering into the shadows, every nerve screaming. My phone had no signal, of course. That part of Alabama was too remote. But then I noticed something else scattered along the gravel. The ground was disturbed. Footprints, too large to be mine, leading up to the edge of the woods and disappearing into darkness. They weren't fresh, not completely, but not old either, the soil still soft in places. My stomach lurched. Someone had been here waiting, watching. I could feel it in the air, a tangible weight pressing down. I realized I needed to leave, but I also needed help. I remembered a small convenience store about 5 miles back, right off the main road. I couldn't just drive blindly into the forest, but I had no other choice. I got back in the truck, started it, and eased onto the road, trying to make my movements as quiet as possible. The forest seemed to close behind me, every shadow now alive, every rustle amplified. But no SUV appeared. Maybe the break in pursuit was real. Maybe whoever it was had abandoned the chase. I didn't dare slow down until I saw the faint glow of the store sign ahead. I pulled in, heart still racing, and saw a few people milling about. Relief washed over me. I parked, got out, and immediately told them I needed to call the police. The nearest sheriff's office was still 30 minutes away, but at least someone was around. I waited in the cold night air, watching the tree lean where I had been followed, but nothing moved. The people inside were friendly, offering coffee, blankets, and quiet company while we waited for the officers. When they arrived, I showed them the tracks, the roads I had driven, every detail I could remember. They took notes seriously, not dismissing me as crazy, which was the first relief. They promised to patrol the area, to check the old roads for signs of suspicious vehicles. By the time I got home, daylight was creeping over the horizon. I parked the truck in my driveway, heart still thumping, mind replaying every moment. I checked the locks on all my doors, drew my blinds, and finally breathed. I realized I had survived something I couldn't fully explain, something almost untraceable. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. The experience left me more aware of the world around me, of how quickly ordinary things could turn threatening. And even though the night had been terrifying, the morning brought safety, warmth, and the reassurance that I was still here, still alive, and still capable of facing the unknown. I never drove down that old blacktop again at night, but I kept the F-150, patched the dents from panic swerves, and told myself that sometimes, the scariest things aren't monsters, they're just people, shadows, and the dark roads we think we know. And surviving that night gave me a quiet, enduring confidence, the kind that makes you respect darkness without being paralyzed by it.